Greetings, people. AFG Media. Today's conversation is going to be about grout and grout staining. But I wanted to give you a little bit of intro to this whole process in the first place. This is the house that I lived in, was born and raised in. It's been here for 65 years. And when I came back after my father passed, I decided to do a little bit of a bathroom refresh. Part of the issue involved is the walls were all wallpapered and had that faux 1970s felt wallpaper that of course with sun and aging had yellowed and became dingy, and all of the felt on it actually became dirt trappers. So I took a look online and found out how easy it was just to soak down the wallpaper on the outside with a sponge, soak it down with water, and just carefully, after soaking it down once or twice, taking a corner and just peeling it back. The entire wallpaper peeled off the wall pretty much effortlessly once I got it started and dampened the sections. The walls themselves, after research, since they're plaster, I found out that the best way to take care of those was to do a 50-50 water paint mix and put on a first light coat and then a second light coat on top of that, as the plaster tends to absorb the water. And when it absorbs the water from the paint, if it's not a 50-50 mix, the first coat tends not to adhere strongly to the plaster itself. And then when you put a second or third coat over the top of it, the first coat winds up bubbling off the surface of the plaster, and at that point you're left with having to re-scrape those sections and retry to coat it. So by doing a 50-50 water mix and paint mix for the first two skim coats, it actually allows it to bind with the plaster and seal in, to give the main coats on top of which I did too, a chance to actually bind with the 50-50%, which bound with the plaster itself. Part of the issues involved was hot water baseboard heaters. Fantastic, 60 plus years old, and great for heating. One of the problems involved was the sink vanity was built in, and in this case actually it was built into the wall, cut into the tile, and had a leg that rested firmly against the outside metal for the hot water baseboard. This would not have been much of a problem if that leg also did not prevent the metal cover that goes on the outside of these. The metal cover could not be removed because it was solidly blocked in place, or when you lifted it up, pulled it away from the actual unit itself, you did not have any room to swing the metal from underneath the vanity here up to the wall, and to move up the wall to actually remove the cover from the unit itself. So I had to figure out how was I going to get the metal cover off and to deal with the sink itself without having to remove the entire vanity unit. And that I wound up removing the leg on the inside and resolving to getting a jack from the car and just a piece of cardboard with foam on it to jack up and secure the center of the vanity, so all the pressure would not be on the one side connecting to the wall. And that allowed me to get the room to actually pull out the cover for the hot water baseboard. Hot water baseboard is a fantastic system. Even better than that, once I got it off, there was rust because up near the toilet there was a water leak beforehand. There was some metal scraped from the paint, so it was bare. And having both two young boys in the house water and roughly 60 years. The section down here wound up rusting, and when I pulled it out I had to scrape it and repaint it with black heat resistant paint. But of course, after 60 years of being covered, no one had ever actually gone in and cleaned out the veins of the hot water baseboard system in here. So what I did was I uncovered them and had a simple solution. Spray water bottle, just put water in it. Metal tin from the dollar store. Slid that metal tin right underneath the hot water baseboard, and with the heat off, went along and just sprayed down through all of the veins, pulling all the dirt and the dust right out of them. And now they are solid silver, almost no dust, and I took the time to actually straighten them out at that point. So that was the first part of the project, and I did some painting. Since I was working from the top down, the last part that I was going to work on is the issue that I'm talking about tonight, which is tile work. I see a lot of them where people go in and they do grout refreshing to brighten it up to make it wonderful and white. And yeah, I looked on videos and saw people doing solutions and out there. And of course, these tiles we're looking at right now are roughly 4 1/4 inches long by 4 1/4 inches wide. So it's not incredibly difficult. And how they actually teach you to do them online is to maybe take one of these fine products here, a Miracle Grout pen. Oh, that looks effective. On the end of it is when you pop off the cap, just like a regular marker, is a spring tip cap. We would shake it, and then with the grout fluid inside of it, you would then go to your tile and just run the pen up and across your sections to restain them. That's all well and good if you have these 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 squares. Another video said just get one of those flat dollar store paint brushes. Go in there and just take it and just run that line straight down. Run that line across with your grout sealant and grout coloring. Again, not an issue when you're talking about 4x4. A little bit time consuming to go and hit each of the sections, but very doable. The only problem is, that's all well and good, except when this house was built, my parents were told to make the bathroom look bigger. They should get the small chicklet size tiles. What are chicklet size tiles? They are the stupid tiles that are approximately 1 inch across. Trying to use, some said use a thicker brush or one of those foam brushes and run across it and run through the grooves, and not to worry about it going over onto the tile, because that'll come up with just a light scrubbing. Just let it sit for a small bit and then come back and scrub it. I tried that. I tried with a paintbrush. I tried with various different methods. All of them were a gigantic pain because of the time consuming in trying to get a 1 inch by 1 inch square across an entire bathroom actually partially taken care of, which didn't come out too well because it winds up, it needs multiple coats because one coat, even with the paintbrush, really is not enough to actually bind to and get rid of that dirty look in the sections. So what I did instead was I have been using Grout Renew, which is a product from an all-in-one colorant sealant, a product that I picked up at Home Depot, and I used it with a paintbrush to try and get this done, but as I said, it was becoming incredibly tiresome to try and get this completed. Then one day I actually figured out how to take care of this without losing my mind. Like I said, a number of them said use a paintbrush and be sloppy on it just because you can come back, the sealant will stay in the grooves, but it'll buff right off the tiles because tiles are ceramic and it doesn't bind to them. So if you come back and do cleanup, all is good. That's all well, but it takes sitting for days doing these little squares and then going back over them a few times. But I found a solution. A bit of a simple solution. Something I should have thought of beforehand, but something I had not seen online. And what I needed was the Grout Renew sealant. A abrasive scouring pad. Doesn't have to be very abrasive, just something light for the surface. And the trick that I tried one day out of my frustration was to take, let me set you down for a second here. Take the Grout Renew right from the bottle. Line it up. Pour a nice bead of it right over the tile. Don't worry about painting it. Don't worry about anything involved with layering it or anything else. And then have a dollar store essentials kitchen type or bathroom type squeegee. That's all you need. Now what you do is just take it, drag it along, and drag it at a 45 degree, and just spread out. Spread out that layer. Of your Grout Renew. Don't have to be fussy, don't have to be tight about it. There's some on the surface of the tile, but I'm not particularly worried about that. Again, pour a bead, nice little bead. Take your squeegee, very little pressure, drag it along, run it at a 45, run it at a 45, run it at a 45, run it at a 45. And with the 45 is a 45 degree to the tile, because the tile itself, you put it straight, you don't want the squeegee to dip down into the actual grooves of the grout. You want it to run over, scrape off the top of the grout, and leave those areas filled up with the grout material. You'll fill those gaps filled with this grout renew. Again, you don't need a lot, because you're probably going to do this like I am, is I will come back and I will do a second coating. So I'll go through, rotate this, go across, down here, bring it back to cover there, and then run the diagonal, pulling that excess across. And all of a sudden, in a section where everyone's telling you to take a paintbrush and work there for multiple hours, you've effectively, in a few minutes, done your first layer of tile staining. Now, it's not going to be perfect. This section right now, as you can see that I just put the grout staining on, what it looked like beforehand, what it looks like right now, again based on different attempts. This coverage is done. I'll wait for another 30 to 60 minutes. As this sets up after 60 minutes, I'll just come back with the scouring pad and just lightly buff over the surface of the tile. I'll keep my hand flat. I'll just buff over it back and forth. No real pressure, because I'm not trying to actually get it from inside the grooves. I'm just taking a surface skim off the top of it. Once that's done, I'll come back and I will hit the same section maybe once or twice, depending upon the grout line fills of when I look at it and I see whether or not it's actually taken in a decent depth and now looks clean and white, where I can run and do a sealant over it. And this took 3 minutes, 2 minutes to actually pour the liquid down and to run the squeegee over it. I think for people who have tile work like this, at least with the white grout stain on this type of tile, the grout stain and a squeegee saved me from not having to rip up this floor and retile it of it. But once I do a final run over the top of this section, it's all going to be good and clean and ready for me to do the final wash downs on the walls and put everything back in place. Hopefully this concept of taking a grout stain and just a simple squeegee will help someone who came to the same problem I had of having these 1 inch by 1 inch chicklets in a large area. Thanks for stopping in and viewing. Have yourself a great day.